In this video about homophobia in the modern age, we will be going over some homophobic internet celebrities, the cultural aspects of homophobia, as well as how homophobia seems to be a male-dominated view in a patriarchal society. When discussing homophobia in the modern age, it is absolutely necessary to address the presence of it on the internet. While there are many online celebrities that have homophobic views, two stick out. The first is Ben Shapiro, who displays some very thinly veiled homophobia on his YouTube channel, typically under the guise of his faith. His audience of 6.9 million YouTube subscribers is mostly teenage boys, and his hateful speech towards those in the LGBTQ+ community seems to have a lasting effect on their young minds.
For the Republican senators, if you vote in favor of the idea that society has an obligation to recognize male-male or female-female dyads in the same way that society has an obligation to recognize male-female, you should not be in the Republican Party.
The other is J.K. Rowling, who is largely known for her fantasy series Harry Potter. Like Shapiro, her target audience is also young. However, as a TERF or trans-exclusionary radical feminist, her dialogue is strictly turned towards those in the trans community, saying that trans women aren't real women and shouldn't be included in female spaces. Differences in homophobia vary country by country, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ+ community. Countries that are culturally conservative may not respond to sexual minorities well, and though the United States is pretty culturally neutral across its many regions, many people that are LGBT in the United States may feel physically unsafe if they were to come out, like they may be harassed or physically assailed. But that is not always the case in other countries. Those countries, it may be societally less acceptable to come out as LGBTQ+. And though you may not be physically assailed, culturally, it is a social death sentence. One good example of this is Japan.
For people who want to come to Japan and warning about this, warning about, being sexual minority, what advice would you give, or you want to say something?
Coming to Japan as an LGBT person, LGBTQ plus person, is not a problem. Like, even though maybe Japan is not that open-minded yet, you're not gonna be harmed. Like, you don't have to fear anything. Like, we were walking on the street in front of all these people, and I don't feel like insecure about this. I know nothing's gonna happen.
っていうのは、なんかどういう感じですか？
どうなんだろうな。場所によっては行きやすい場所もあるけど、僕は結構クローズしてる場所も多くて、してないところだと、僕はもう仕事上結構隠してるので、ただ、聞かれたら、別に隠すつもりはないけど、あえて自分からオープンをしていかないっていう選択をしてるので。
それはどうしてですか？
やっぱり僕あまり40代近くて。
And though LGBTQ sentiment has been positive around the world and increasingly going upwards, it is still in many cases unacceptable, whether in work or public, to be openly out, especially in countries like Iran, where around 5,000 gay and lesbian folks have been executed since 1979. When asked about whether trans students in grade school should be allowed to play on sports teams consistent with their gender identity, 55% of women support trans inclusion, compared to 45% of men, a gender gap of 10 percentage points. The gender gap is 16 percentage points. When asked about collegiate sports, where just 41% of men support trans inclusion, compared to 57% of women, the same poll also found a 6 percentage point gender gap in support for the Equality Act, a federal LGBT civil rights bill. It is less surprising that men, not women, are opposed to the inclusion of trans people in sports. In every view on homophobia presented in this video, there is one thing that is apparent. We need to see a global cultural shift in the view of those in the LGBTQ+ community. While homophobia is on a downward trend, the way those in the community are portrayed in the media, treated around the world, and viewed in a negative light by men specifically is not acceptable. We are all human, and being who we are should not affect the way we are treated, no matter who you love or the gender you present as.